Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a different video than I normally make. I wanted to start getting into podcasts, but I don't really have an outlet of which to do that, and I also don't have anyone to join me in a podcast. So I wanted to ramble and I wanted to talk about things, and I don't have any video or anything to play over it, so I'm just going to kind of play footage of Team Fortress 2 over it while I talk, and hopefully that's going to work out just fine. Also, sorry about any audio issues that there might be on here. Team Fortress 2, for whatever reason, whenever I record, the audio of the game is so much louder than what my mic picks up that the game really just overshadows my audio, so there's no way anyone can hear anything. So it's basically at 0 right now, and that's just kind of how I might have to keep it for a little bit. To mitigate that issue. So today I'd like to talk about really basic pen testing, more just kind of me messing around with things I find really interesting and things that I've researched. So a hobby that I picked up lately is, and actually for about the past year, is collecting very common keys. So, which is funny because, you know, Team Fortress 2. The first one I started off with was the CH751 key, which is a very, very common cabinet key. And this key can open really basic stuff, like some filing cabinets, like at my therapist's office. The filing cabinet there is a CH751. It's super fun to mess around with. It's kind of like a nice little party gag. You know, you hang out with your friends, you know something that can be opened by this certain key, and you'll just vet them that you have the key or something like that. Or you're at work and just kind of mess around. It's like the CH751 key, for whatever reason, also opens the dishwasher at work. I work at a taco shop. So that's kind of fun. You know, they'll be doing dishes or something. I'll go over there, I'll open up the dishwasher and like turn it off a little bit. Just a bit of fun, no one gets hurt. Fun games, my boss doesn't care that much. So the CH751 key is pretty common, but it's definitely not the everything key. It's just cabinets, and also one gas station that I found at Circle K. And the way I find these things is literally when I'm out in public, I've got, I think, about 15 keys on my key ring. I have them separated into 2 key rings, but it doesn't matter. And if I see a lock and I feel like I can put my key in that lock without getting in too much trouble, then I'll go try that lock just to see. And then I'll normally jot it down in a notebook or just keep a mental note of it so I remember. My latest fascination has been linear systems and door king. They're both, like, if you live in a gated community and you have an electronic gate or like a keypad or maybe even an RFID scanner, a lot of times if you see a panel, 3 very distinct buttons all on the line and a like kind of telephone style keypad, little green monochrome screen, it's very likely to be a door king system. And all door king systems, for the most part, are key to like. The key's actually available on Amazon. Pretty expensive, it's about 20 bucks, but if you wanted to, you could buy that key and say you wanted to get into someone's neighborhood. It's a gated community. Of course, you could jump the fence, but why do that when you can go over to the door king control panel, use your key, open it up, and hit the mail switch, which is how like mailmen get into gated communities. Just a little momentary switch connected to a key. Really, really simple stuff. So it's not that hard to defeat systems like that, especially if you do a little bit of research into them. There's a lot of just like random things that you see every day that if you did the research you could probably mess with or get into. There is Epson printers, ESP, or EPS, something like that. Anyway, these are receipt printers. We use them at work, and they run over the internet, which is, of course, always a weakness. And the second thing is most people that have these receipt printers are not going to change any of the default settings for the most part, so it's going to be like the default password is available online, which is really common with a lot of electronics that do connect to the internet. So if you just kind of put a little bit of research into it, and I've done this at work, you can get into those receipt printers and print whatever you want, which means at work, if we're slow, I'm printing memes and giving them to my coworkers. Which, it's all fun and games, it's fine, and, you know, if my boss asked me to stop, I probably would, just because he is my boss. And it's not that detrimental to security to heighten up the security on your receipt printers. You know, no one's going to be able to steal your stuff through a receipt printer. But one of the things they can do if you're running a similar point of sale system as the place where I work is from the receipt printer, it's connected to the register. So you can remotely open the register from your phone or laptop. Which, you know, it's not that bad because for the most part, if you're running a restaurant or a business with a point of sale system, you have someone behind that register. And if someone just randomly opens the register and tries to get the cash out of it, they will probably be stopped, not with force, just like, hey, what are you doing? And most people would probably stop at that point. So security-wise, it's not that big of a deal. It's more of like just something teenagers could mess with, which is exactly what I'm doing. And something I think businesses should probably look out for, but I don't think it's at the top of the list. One of the things I think definitely should be at the top of the list is there is a system, it's for point of sales, the POS system, called Touch Bistro. And it's pretty cheap. It's not like the most expensive system out there for companies to use. But one of the flaws it has with it is everything is based off this one web server that you install in your restaurant, right? And most restaurants will only really have like one network, but they subdivide it into multiple different networks for different things. I have no idea why some restaurants do that. The restaurant I work at has 5 different networks for no reason. I cannot explain to you why. But on that network, there's going to be the Touch Bistro server, which for some reason almost always runs off of a Mac server. And that's cool and everything. But if you get into the network, and you know most restaurant networks are not that secure, you could use a program on Kali Linux like Wi-Fi or something. Just run that for 30 minutes like that. And most of the time, if it's like a WPA2 or WPA network especially, you'll be able to get into it, no problem. Especially if someone just connected to it or disconnects and reconnects. You could actually de-auth them if you wanted to. But from that, if you've gotten the network password and you've logged in and everything, just kind of searched around, at some point you're going to find where Touch Bistro lives, and you'll be able to log into that. And a lot of restaurants also have their security cameras on the network as well. Of course, default password, because they're restaurants, they don't really care that much. With Touch Bistro, though, you can monitor your employees, you can monitor how long they've clocked in, you can monitor sales, and you can even edit the amount of time someone has been clocked in. So if you have an employee that's a little tech savvy, and they get into Touch Bistro, they could be basically stealing money from you by adjusting hours. So say they only clocked in for 5 hours, they could adjust that and say they were clocked in for 10. And if you don't check, you know, actually make sure they're there, if you're not very involved as a manager or as a boss, you may not notice that for a very long time, and then it's going to be very difficult and a very lengthy process to get your money back from that. So I definitely think it's important that maybe some restaurants take that kind of thing more seriously.
The big earner?
Get back to the key thing.
The one that gives you speed and gives you
I haven't been able to do that many incredible things. A lot of the things that you can open with like very common keys, like the 8126 or CH701, they're going to be very minor things, not top level security things. A lot of cabinets. I do have a 12A4X, I believe is what it's called. It's a Ford fleet key, so something you may not know is a surprising amount of police stations all have cars that are keyed alike. Which is always a horrible thing, because what criminal wouldn't want to get into a police car? You know, what do they keep in police cars? They keep guns and other things that you don't want criminals to have their hands on. Especially in, well, where the times are right now. If you have someone, say there's a riot going on, you have a very, not tech savvy, but very security savvy rioter, right? There's a good chance they probably have bought the 1248X just to add to a pentesting keyring or something like that. And there's a good chance that someone could get in their police car with that, and that's probably not a good thing. I don't think it's as big of an issue as it used to be, but it definitely is still a problem, especially in lower funded you know, police stations. I can see that being a big issue, where they already have the cars and they're already all keyed alike, and they don't want to change that because of the monetary troubles that could cause. On the whole, like, lockpicking side, I have some experience with that, just as a hobby, and I actually tried to get a job doing it, but it's a very lengthy process to be able to get a job. in a locksmithing business. But I've bought a few lockpick sets. I've gotten a few just like asking for Christmas and my birthday, and I've practiced quite often, but I'm not as good as like some of my friends or a million other people I've seen that can do it. But I'm pretty good at like tubular locks and some like more obscure ones. So, and lockpicking is not that hard to pick up. People say that like tubular locks are unpickable. You know, I've heard people say it. They actually sell tools specifically for picking tubular locks, and it's not that hard to get down once you practice it enough. So it's lockpicking is fun. It's an exciting hobby, but it's not really going to get you everywhere you want to go, and it's probably not going to be the most profitable hobby for you to learn unless you get very good at it or you put the effort into a school or like trade school for locksmithing, so you have what you legally need to become a locksmith.
Yeah, can we get an NG to set up a teleport or a sentry gun at their base?
Some more entry stuff, really. There's I forgot what they're called. I think it's request to exit sensors. They're little white things that go over doors, and when they sense a temperature difference on the inside of the door, they will unlock the door, and that's so that people on the inside of the building can easily exit the building. Because if they're already on the inside, then you know what's the point of locking them in? And then most of the time on the outside of the door, they'll have like an RFID reader or something like that, just to securely get people into the facility. However, if you get a aerosol can, or even like vapes sometimes work for whatever reason. Some people do it with alcohol. If you can get some temperature difference on the other side of the door by, say, spraying an aerosol can through the crack in the door, a lot of times those the systems will trigger, seeing the heat difference and thinking, oh, there's a person that wants to leave, let's open the door for him. Which, you know, bad thing, but if you mount your doors correctly, that's very unlikely to actually happen. But if you say know where a request to exit sensor is, and you get an aerosol can, like a can of air for like cleaning your computer, hold it upside down, put it through the crack, and spray on the other side, you'll be able to trick that sensor into thinking there's a person that's trying to exit, and the door will open. Personally, I've never seen that, I've never done that, but I know it's a thing that happened. Devin Ullman is a great guy for pen testing. He does wonderful videos, and puts a lot of effort into them as well. So if you want to know more about that one specifically, he's done videos on that. He did one where he was outside of a bank, and he shot alcohol through the crack in the door, and it opened. It was very funny. More examples on just kind of things I've done, which don't replicate anything I've done. It's a miracle that I have not been in any legal trouble for these kind of things, and in the future I don't intend on doing them without consent. At my school we had RFID readers all over the place for teachers to get in, and like the janitorial staff and stuff like that, so that there didn't have keys floating around. I'm pretty sure that was the reason. And what me and one of my friends did was I got my friends to get really close to a teacher and actually get a hold of their RFID card, and I bought a really cheap RFID reader writer on Amazon, and we were able to scan her card and make copies of it, which I literally did for no other reason than I was tired of when I was late to school. They wouldn't let you go through the side door that you normally could go through. You had to go through the main office, and it was just a very inconvenient process for me to do, so I took it into my own hands and copied someone's RFID card. Which, that part was not really a physical security threat, that was more train your teachers a little bit more to not let that kind of thing happen, which definitely students shouldn't be trying to do it, so you shouldn't expect them to, but it's probably important in higher security settings, not a school, but like a business, to train your staff to not let people get too close to your cards, or don't let people even get too close to you. I think that's much easier right now because of the Corona 6-foot thing, but in a legitimate business, if it's a high security deal, don't let them get too close to you, just in case they're trying to read a card. You of course would never know if they were trying to or not, but RFID is its own technology, and as a little bit of a fun fact, it stands for radio frequency identification. If you want to be really fun at parties, you could tell them that. lot of cybersecurity stuff that I have done has been really simple and kind of script kiddie-ish for the most part. Some of it I've kind of figured out just by messing around. I use Kali Linux on both my laptops that I use, and there's two really good tools for, especially if you're trying to attack a network, like you don't know the password to the Wi-Fi or something. Wi-Fi is a good program to use. Wi-Fi 2 has come out as well. It's a Python program. It's very easy, very intuitive to use, and there's a lot of things online that will tell you exactly how to do it, what you need to do, what you should expect, and what to do if there's problems.
Shit.
Another one that's a
guess
little
I
bit more
actually
complicated,
have
but
lost my mind.
for me, I get better results with it, is a program called
Whatever,
Airmon, or
not
Aircrack.
mine.
It's,
Fucking
you know, it's a Linux program, and I'm pretty sure it does come pre-installed on Kali. I used Ubuntu for a little bit, so I was really used to installing those things myself. But for a little bit, when the restaurant I worked at was closed for dine-in and we only did to-goes, I had a lot of free time, so I brought my laptop in, my really garbage, like, MacBook Air, like 2011, something like that. And I just kind of mess around, and that's how I got into the network the first time, was with Wi-Fi, and just kind of messing around, seeing what I was able to do, seeing what I was able to get into. Not for personal gain or monetary gain, it was solely just because I wanted to mess around, and I was given the opportunity to. Another thing to remember is, teenagers especially, if they have the opportunity to mess with something that they're not supposed to, and they have the know-how to do that, it's very likely that they're going to. Not as like a F society kind of deal. It's more of just teenagers run on impulse. And what's more impulsive than breaking into someone's web server? It is a very particular kind of teenager that would do that, but they definitely are out there, and it's definitely a problem that some businesses may face at some point, especially schools would definitely face. And everyone knows that the network security at schools is not exactly the best thing in the world. The last part of senior year at my high school, I was not allowed to bring a phone or any electronics in because I just kept harassing them on the network. And it was really simple stuff. It wasn't anything huge. The only big thing I ever got in trouble for was I logged into PowerSchool on an administrator account, an elevated account, and I changed the profile picture on my PowerSchool to a picture of SpongeBob because I thought it was just the funniest thing in the world. And I got suspended for that, but I didn't change my grades, so I think that's why the punishment wasn't that bad. So just the little things like that are just kind of exciting to do, and I've got a lot of stories like that where I've just messed with something and gotten a bit of trouble for it, but after that it's kind of like, it's whatever. It's a laughing matter at this point. Let's see, more security stuff, more pen testing stuff. I've got a few shims. I don't really use them because I don't like them. I'm not a big shimming guy. I did buy it's called a D-Strike watch. I don't remember. It has an ESP chip in it, and you're able to de-auth networks and do like beacon and probe attacks from like this little smartwatch. It's the neatest piece of kit I've ever bought. It's very fun to mess with, very fun to play with. And for the beacon attack, I actually changed it so that instead of being random fake routers, it was the copy pasta of Meet the Spy, which is the dumbest thing, but by default, it's actually the lyrics to Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. So by design, it's meant to be kind of funny, I think. It's really hard to tell with that kind of stuff. It's supposed to be serious or not. Yeah. Like I said, I don't do that much lockpicking. That was kind of a phase I went through about 2 years ago. Got okay with it, and then just kind of dropped it after a little while because there's only so many locks that you can legally pick before you run out, and it no longer becomes exciting, and the idea of picking someone else's lock seems kind of bad to me. It's not something I would personally want to do that often, or at all. Really. I'm going to go ahead and say at all for legal reasons. But a lot of times, you don't need to pick a lock. Like I said earlier with my pen testing keys and just common keys in general, there's a good chance, like, if you're very focused on something and say it's like like a medicine cabinet, I guess would be kind of a decent example of that. Say you're a bad kid and your grandma's got some real exciting drugs that you'd really like to get your hands on, but she locks them in like a metal cased, you know, pill cabinet. Nothing that you're going to be able to break into without her noticing. If you find that cabinet online, there's a good chance that it's going to be keyed alike because it's so much cheaper just to key everything alike. And most people aren't going to be aware of it, so it's not that big of a deal. But like, if your, you know, little scamp grandson just buys that key or buys another cabinet, they're going to be able to get into that, and you won't know, except for, you know, your medicine will be missing. And you know, that could be a potential problem. I don't think the law would be involved. I think you just kind of get a slap on the wrist and say, hey, what the hell's wrong with you? So, there's just not a whole lot of examples that I personally have found with my keyring. It's just a lot of cabinets and like gated community stuff. So I don't really have that exciting of stories to tell about it. I really enjoy talking about it. I don't have another outlet to discuss it other than what I'm doing right now, and I don't intend for this to become. I don't think this is going to be a recurring thing because I don't think it's that exciting, really. But it's definitely a wonderful outlet on YouTube just for me to rant, and if anyone finds it interesting, then they can watch it. And I probably won't be playing Team Fortress 2 in the next one, just because that's way too much TF2. And this game is kind of on its last legs, admittedly. If anyone is interested, I'd love to give some tutorials just on coding or cybersecurity or anything I've built for this kind of thing. Like, I built a few Pip-Boys, and one of them was designed specifically to run Wi-Fi and basically nothing else, other than like really basic networking commands like ARP. So, you know, that was an interesting project to do, and the challenges in it were really interesting to overcome and research, because it was mostly me looking at things that other people have done and kind of figuring out a way to make these different projects work together. Let's see. That's kind of really all I have on just really basic stuff to cover, and just kind of a few stories from this little hobby I've got. Elevators are pretty fun if you have the right keys to them. A lot of times they've got like the FEO K1, which is a really common elevator key, but in Oklahoma it's not that common, so I haven't done it personally. I've only gotten into one elevator that I could control a little bit, and that was about a year ago. I didn't do anything with it other than move it like once. But that does bring up another interesting topic. Sabbath mode in elevators is a real thing, and it is probably the wildest thing I've ever heard of. You know, very devout Jewish people cannot work on Sunday. They can't work on the Sabbath. And that includes some kind of odd things, like carrying boxes is not allowed on the Sabbath, that kind of thing. You know, operating an oven, that counts as work. You can't do that on the Sabbath, so people prepare meals before Sunday so that they have things to do, or they have things to eat, because they can't operate their oven. Some ovens have a Sabbath mode as well. But in elevators, Sabbath mode is literally the elevator will start at the first floor, and it will go up, and once it's gone up and collected passengers, it'll go down floor by floor, and drop everyone off. That way no one has to actually operate the elevator. There's no need for anyone to hit a button or do anything, so it counts as not working. I'd imagine it's pretty imperative to some people's way of life, and that's really interesting, but it's probably something a decently clever criminal may be able to exploit. I don't think they would, personally, because I don't know. Who knows about Sabbath mode? You know, there's, unless you're a very devout Jewish person, you're probably not going to know what Sabbath mode is. I've met people that don't know what the Sabbath is, so it's not going to be an exploit or a tactic to exploit.
It's really hard when there's just like pyros everywhere.
Not a whole lot elevators things that I do know.
But yeah, Spy is the best
I'm
way to
fairly
check if
comfortable
there's
with
any luck
electronics
because, oh, hey,
in
now
general,
he's on our-
so I think if I could get a cabinet open, I could probably do something with it, but I'm not sure what I'd be able to do with it, so I've never attempted it. And also, elevators are very expensive, and if I break one, I'm going to have to pay for it and probably spend some time in jail. Not something I'd like to do currently. I just moved out of my parents' house. I don't want to immediately get arrested. Someday, just not today. The best tip I can give on this kind of thing is do research. If you find pen testing and things very similar to that interesting, then my best recommendation is go on YouTube, look up what you think that you want to see, especially like Deviant Allman. Look him up because he's awesome at this kind of stuff. And just get into it. Look up what you want to look up, and if it's just entertainment for you, that's awesome. Definitely be entertained by it. It's really cool to know and really cool to look into. If it's something that's informative to you, that's also great. If you want to be a pen tester in the future or want to study cybersecurity, there are definitely outlets for you to do that. There's millions of people out there that would love to share their craft with you. Most people are very enthusiastic that people get into that. And if you're just researching pen testing because you own a business or you want to be more secure with your house, that's also great to do. Because who's better? Personally, I think that there's no one better in this entire world to show you what's wrong with your security than any angsty or edgy teenager that's tech savvy. Or a teenager that knows how to pick locks at a decent level. You let them loose and tell them that they need to get into that building and they have permission, they're going to use every tactic that any criminal would to get into that building or to get wherever you told them to do it. Just because teenagers are pretty destructive and they think it's cool when they can do things that are illegal. So, if you want a consultant, go find your like edgy teenage cousin or something, as long as he's not a complete moron. I'm going to go ahead and stop this here, because I've actually run out of topics to talk about. I wrote a tiny list, and that was all I had. I didn't have a script or anything. If you guys like this format of videos, if you think it was interesting, or if you think this was the most annoying video you've ever seen, please tell me. I'm not going to be offended by anything anyone says. I need to know what's the best format to do this, if I should do like slideshows, if I should do a proper presentation, or if recording this audio over video games is an acceptable thing. So please do tell me. Any input that you guys have, I'd love to hear it. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope it was good.